guys, welcome to the first ever episode of The Handy Life. This is going to be a new channel we're starting on YouTube, and it's going to cover a lot of the work that my wife and I do around the house. We've got a lot of projects in the queue here. We actually are flooded with Harvey, so we've been remodeling our whole house, and this is just one of the jobs that we're doing. So we're going to have a goal of putting out one new video a month on this channel. So stay tuned. If you like this one, there'll be more to come. To start, we're going to do our master closet. This has been one that we've been waiting to get to for a while with clothes strewn about the house all over the place. You're going to learn a lot in this video because it's going to take you from start to finish. We literally have no shelving up on the wall right now. So I'm going to show you each step of the way, and I think you'll pick up some things that'll help you if you have a similar project in mind. All right, now we're on the left-hand side of the closet here. And one thing I like to do to start any project like this is to sketch it up. You really have to sketch it up, get the layout in your head, and come in the room and even sketch it up. So I've actually drawn out lines on these various walls where bits of the closet plywood and stuff will go, and rods and things. So I know exactly where everything's gonna go. I know I'm gonna be happy with it at the end of the day, and that's really the most important thing. So this wall is going to be the wall where my clothes hang. There'll be two bays for hanging clothes here. One will start with a rod about 1.5 inches below the ceiling. So it'll be way up there. I can't reach that, obviously. It's a 9-foot ceiling. So we'll have a permanently mounted step ladder in the room where you can just grab it from here, set it up, climb up, grab the clothes that you need. Some laundry hampers in here as well. And we're gonna put like a cubby around the laundry, so there'll be a piece of plywood that goes up here and another one that goes right here, and they'll joint together nicely. A couple reasons for that. One of the biggest ones, because we really don't need the cubby unless I want to put something here, and this vertical piece of plywood is gonna allow me to attach a bunch of shelves going across here, which are gonna serve as shoe shelves, so to store a whole bunch of shoes. And while I'm on this wall, I'll talk a little bit about what we've done so far. We have done a little bit. You'll see all these little pieces of wood. This is just scrap wood, and it's attached to the wall here to build the wall out. Because the construction of the wall, at least for all these vertical pieces of plywood that are going to go here and on this cabinet here, is they're going to be doubled up pieces of plywood. You'll never see this part. That's why it can be these pieces of scrap, small pieces of wood, because it'll be hidden behind the main piece of plywood and then the end cap, which I'll show you here. So basically, we're going to have a construction that looks like this, where we have a piece of plywood that goes on here and is attached to these backer spacer plywood pieces, and then a 1x2 piece of pine is going to go here, and it's all going to fit together. It's all going to be painted to match and be the same color. So it's going to look really nice at the end of it. And that's going to go all the way up to the ceiling. So you can see I've put these spacer pieces all the way up to the ceiling. The other part on this wall that I'll explain really fast is this pantry cabinet. This pantry cabinet also needed these spacers, right? All the way up it. Well, there's about a 1/4 inch overhang of this face frame here. And this is standard. All cabinets have a 1/4 inch overhang of the face frame against the side of the carcass of the cabinet. So in order to bring this spacer out enough, I had to put a 1/4 inch strip of plywood behind it to make sure it was flush with the edge of this face frame right here, this surface right here, so it sticks out enough. If I didn't do that and I just put the plywood on there and attached it, my overlap of my face frame that I'm going to put right here, that pine strip that I told you about, it would not be consistent. It would have more of an overlap on this side, because I would only effectively have a 1/2 inch thickness reveal instead of the 3/4 inch full thickness that I have with my 3/4 inch birch. So that's it for this wall. And on the right side of the room, what we have is we're gonna have 2 shelves that run up top. So one here and one just below that. We'll have 2 bays for clothes. One will be here, and it'll stop here, and the next will be just below that. 2 rods going across. This is a security box and telephone wires and coax cables and all that run throughout the house. The clothes in this bay will actually hang over this and conceal this perfectly. So I'm not actually planning to build any kind of cover over this, or planning on moving that or anything. I think it's fine just where it is. Over here, my wife has some longer dresses, so this is not going to have the divider here. It's just going to be a continuous length all the way to the floor from about here. And that pole will run into the wall right here. There'll be another pole that comes out of this wall and crisscrosses and terminates right here where these two shelves will also terminate. So that's the idea on this wall, and we will see how that works out. All right, guys, now we're out in the driveway. We're going to talk a little bit about the wood we're using for the project and a simple trick to help you cut this wood a little easier if you're working by yourself. So the wood we're using is 3/4 inch birch face plywood. It's available at any big box store like Home Depot where I bought mine. It's just pretty expensive stuff, and it's stout, it's sturdy stuff, great for shelving, but it's also really heavy. And if you've ever tried to lift this and kind of try to work it through a table saw, it's super awkward and it's almost impossible to get a nice clean edge by yourself, especially if you're not working with like a big commercial grade like bolted to the floor table saw. Most of you probably have a table saw that's smaller than that. It's going to be a little bit more difficult to work with. So this is how I get around that, and this is how it makes it a lot easier for me. So I just built a movable fence out of another piece of plywood. And the way you do that is you attach a small piece to a larger piece of plywood. This small piece has the factory edge showing right here. So that's our nice, clean, straight edge. We know that's a good straight edge, so we're going to use that. And then this is actually any width of plywood you want. I actually have a little extension on the end here because I want to be able to attach my clamps in such a way that the clamp actually stays out of the way of the motor of my circular saw as it passes. I'm going to show you what I mean by that. But what you're going to do is use a wider piece on the bottom, and then you run your saw along it. So let me show you that real quick. So this piece is actually custom made for this saw. I put it on this piece, and you'll see that my blade edge is actually right up against here. So that's where I know my cut line is going to be. There's my blade edge. It's right up on there. So my cut line is going to be right on that line every single time. So now it's great because I can just follow my fence, my edge here, and go. But anyway, now that I've put my edge right on my line, I just follow that line and I've got a perfect cut. No picking up this plywood, no trying to handle it and push it through a table saw without injuring yourself or making a poor cut. Gives you a nice, clean, straight cut every time. As long as you assemble this thing properly, you're set up for success. So I just wanted to show you that. We're going to be ripping all this plywood down to 15 3/4 of an inch. The reason for that is we can get 3 full strips out of a single piece of plywood. We have limited waste. And the reason I'm not doing 16 inches, you might ask, we have 48 inches of plywood, so 48 divided by 3 is 16. Well, you have to account for the actual blade edge because you are removing some material. You're removing about 1/8 of an inch with every cut. So if you don't account for that, then that last piece is not going to be 16 inches. It's going to be 15 3/4 of an inch or something like that because you're removing 2 blade edges along the single sheet of plywood. So that's what we're going to do. Alright guys, we're back on the left-hand side of the room. We're working on that cubby space that is going to have our laundry hampers and the step ladder on this side. And to start, we have already attached some of the pieces. This is the bottom piece of that vertical piece of plywood, and as I mentioned earlier, this will be capped off with a piece of 1 by 2 inch pine. This is attached with 18 gauge 2-inch brad nails, shot straight into our backer pieces, our spacers that we have here, and I've cut it here. I cut it here for a reason, not because I want the joint to be here, partly because I want the joint to be here because then it's concealed. Remember, I have 9-foot ceilings. I only have 8-foot long plywood, so there has to be a joint somewhere. So I put it right here to partly conceal it, but also to serve as a support for my shelf. There's a lot of different ways that you can support shelving when you're doing closet work. And this is one of them, and it's more of an integral support. And it's one of the best supports that you can possibly do, because this piece is very well secured, and all of the fasteners, all the brads that are in there are going to be in shear, being pushed down with this, and it's really just a good connection. So it's very sturdy. If you look from the bottom side, it looks very clean. Once this is done and you'll see this doubled up piece of plywood on the top side, it's going to look super clean, and you'll look at it and wonder, how is that even supported? Well, it's supported because of it's just a good way to construct it. Another way to do it that you'll see quite often is people will use a cleat, and they'll attach a piece of wood like this, put a couple screws into it, and then they'll support the shelf on the cleat. I'm not a particular fan of that. You'll see that I do use that in some cases, like if we have a shelf running across a wall, then there will be a cleat attached to the wall. That's pretty much the only instance where I think a cleat is needed. If you do have a circumstance where you have maybe two shelves that come into each other, and they come into a vertical piece at the same location, then it's actually not going to be possible for you to use this method, because you're not going to be able to cut both of your doubled up vertical pieces of plywood. It has to, one of them at least has to continue on vertically, otherwise you've lost your connection there. So in those kind of circumstances, it's better, and what you can do is use a router with a certain 3/4 inch router bit, or whatever thickness you have. In this case, we're working with 3/4 inch birch, so you would use a 3/4 inch router bit. I'm not sure if I'll use that at any point during this design. I don't think I'll need it, but if I do, then I'll show it to you. But basically, you're going to make a dado into the wood, a slot into the wood, so that your shelf will go directly into that slot and fit nice and tightly. And then you'll secure it with glue and brads the same way that you would do a lot of other things. I'll also mention how we attach this divider right here. This divider is attached with pocket holes, so you need to think about ways that you can attach things to the wall and keep them sturdy. You know, when you have pieces protruding directly perpendicular away from the wall, you do need to think about how to support them. I know that in this particular case, I will have a shelf going across here, and it will attach to the top of here. So that's going to provide a good amount of rigidity to this piece. But without anything in this lower section, it is going to be pretty flimsy down there. So that's why I put in 3 pocket holes down here. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and attach this top piece to our pocket hole piece over here and our braided piece over here. It's going to be something like this. You're going to line this edge up and make sure you're lined up throughout. Let's see. And you want that just as important as the edge along the side. You want this top edge to be nicely aligned as well. Alright. That looks pretty good. We'll go ahead and shoot some brads into it. And that is a really stiff connection. I didn't mention this, there's this little cockroach on the wall right here. This is actually called a stud buddy. It's a good little tool, and it'll help to locate your studs. It's basically just 2 magnets. I mean, you can do the same thing with just magnets, but this is in a convenient, easy to hold little contraption like this. So whether you use magnets or this, it basically just locks onto the nails that are into the wall, holding the drywall into the studs. Okay, we're gonna double up this cubby that we made with some additional plywood. This plywood, we've already mitered the ends to 45-degree angles, so that when they come together, they'll make a joint and you don't see the end grain of the plywood. You'll notice that on all the plywood, we actually pre-primed it. When you're doubling up any of this wood, you want to make sure that this front edge is flush, because this is the edge that the pine caps are going to go onto. And let's do it. Nails in. And And just checking, making sure it doesn't come through on the backside, and it didn't, of course. Keeping that front edge nice and flush, and this also is going to stiffen it up. Look how, I mean, I'm really trying to move it, and I can't. That's those pocket holes in the wall, together with the fact that we're doubling up this. And to cap it off, we've got another mitered piece of plywood. You can see we just mitered the ends off. So what I did to do that, by the way, was I, of course, took my miter saw and I put it at a bevel angle of 45 and I cut. But I also removed some additional material on the inside just to make sure it didn't interfere, because really what I care about is that joint. So how did I remove that material on the inside? I used a 4-inch grinder from Ryobi with a sanding wheel on it. And this will just, these little pieces of sandpaper on it will just spin and just knock off material. So we're just gonna lay this on top, get it flush with the front. I'm gonna make sure that this edge looks pretty nice. And it does. And then we're gonna tack this down as well with our 18 gauge brad nails. And I can actually do this from the underside. You won't be able to see the holes. So I'm pinching these boards together so that there is no gap. What you'll see is going to be nicely faced off like that. And that's all going to be painted. So now I'm ready to go up with my vertical up to the ceiling here. And it's going to make a really nice joint here because I'm going to cover up any splintering on the ends that was caused by the cross cutting. And now we're just attaching this to the wall. Same approach as before with the 18 gauge 2-inch brad nail. Visualize, this is going to be our strong point that our rods going across are going to screw into. So it's going to be very strong. I'm not going to have any problem. Okay, so we've cut our pine that's going to face this off. We made our miter cuts, did all of our measuring. I fitted up already. I know it fits pretty good. So we're going to go ahead and attach it. Now we do have a couple of outside corners and a couple of corners that we want to make sure that miter is nice and tight. So one trick I learned from another guy on YouTube on Finished Carpentry TV was to use a special kind of glue. It's actually called cyanoacrylic, and it works quite well, and it forms a really nice bond, so you can actually attach your trim work before you nail it up. So you know that your joints are exactly the way you want them to be. You can do this for baseboards, crown molding, this type of stuff. So it's got the glue, and it's also got an accelerator that helps the glue dry almost instantly. So you spray, I've been spraying the accelerator on a separate piece. That way I have time to make the pieces up, and then the accelerator in contact with the glue, which is already applied on this piece, is going to cause it to dry really fast. Within seconds, actually. So basically you bring it in here and you gotta make sure you get it good almost instantly, because it's gonna dry and it's gonna get really hard. And this stuff gets hot too. It's chemical reaction going on, and when it makes contact, it's on there. So I've been holding it for maybe 8 seconds and it's not going anywhere. So it's some pretty cool stuff. Definitely helpful when you're trying to make good quality joints. So now I can bring this piece in where I want to, and I can drop it right here. You can see it fits perfectly. What we're going to do is brad it in again with our 1.25" 18 gauge brad nails. I'm going to do the same thing with this joint. Alright, we have the pine attached now. We've gone ahead and filled some of the nail holes to start off with. And really all that's left on this wall now is to do some sanding, some caulking, some painting, attach the poles, and then I need to drill the holes and things for the adjustable shelves, which I'll show you later on. And just because you've seen it before, I'm going to go ahead and speed up the bay construction on the other side of the closet. All right, back outside, we're working on that upper shelf that goes on the right-hand side of the closet. So what I did here was to use a complete piece because I've got less than 8 feet of run along the wall, and then I've got less than 4 feet to get to that termination that I made. And so you see there's no seam here. This is going to be a very strong corner, a very strong shelf, and it's going to last the life of this closet easily. What I did notice though was that bay, if you're looking at the closet here, the front door is going to be over on that side. The bay that spans from here to here is a really long bay. It's about 60 inches. So you end up with some bow in the wood if you don't support that, if you're using a single piece of plywood. So as you can see, I've already started to double up the plywood. So I've got a piece already attached. I'm going to show you how I do that. It's pretty important that you don't do it with the plywood already in place on the shelf, because if you attach the fasteners and screw down and you already have an existing bow in the wood, where you attach the fasteners is only going to reinforce that bow. It's going to keep the bow. So if you do it flat with the wood on the ground and it's nice and flat the way it is now, make all your attachments, the wood's going to want to stay like that. The fasteners are going to want to oppose any bowing that the wood is going to want to do on its own. Whereas if you do it in place and there's already a bow, you're only going to reinforce that bow and keep it in there. I've also put some construction adhesive between the two plywood panels. That's just another thing that's going to keep it from wanting to shear across each other. You're going to be able to see the bottom from the floor height. So that's why I made the bottom this continuous piece. I don't need to make the top a continuous piece again because I've already got the strength from the lower piece. So I don't want people from the floor to be able to see that seam. So therefore I put it on the bottom of the wood. It's going to set in position on the wall like this, and this is all I'll see. I don't mind if I have a seam on the top. Matter of fact, it's perfectly fine if I have a seam on the top. I don't want to cut another piece like this because I waste an entire sheet of plywood doing that. So therefore I just use scraps that I already have cut to this width, put it in place, and nail it down. So let's do that. Here we got some paneling adhesive that we're going to use. Just slap it all over it. Like I said, this is just a strengthening measure that's gonna make this whole thing even stronger. And this is the leading edge, the forward edge. So this is the edge that we care about. I'm gonna get that nice and straight. The back edge, the only thing we care about is making sure that there's not some big overhang between the two boards. As long as they're pretty close, then we're good. All right, that looks pretty nice. Let's go ahead and attach some screws. And we'll be done. So if you stand on it while you're doing this, you'll get some nice squeeze to that glue. Just using drywall screws, 1.25 inches in length, so it doesn't go through the backside of the other piece of plywood. And that is, we'll continue on with that. All right guys, we're back in the closet now. We're putting in the second shelf. As you can see, I've already dropped in the first shelf. We've doubled it up. It's a lot stiffer. This is the part that I was concerned about, this long span in between this bay, and it's stiff. It's going to be even stiffer once we put our pine end cap, the facing that's going to go on here. What I'm doing now is I'm putting the mid-range support for the second shelf that's going to go on top of that. I'm using pocket holes again for this joinery right here. I've never used this in shelving construction, but I'm finding for this project it to be very efficient. So what I'm going to do is line this support directly up with the lower support, the main support for the cabinet, so it's going to be sitting right on top of there. Good path for the load transfer of anything heavy that's going to be up here. Speed square, you need it for any project like this. I've gone ahead and marked here to make sure it's perpendicular against this, straight into the wall. You can quickly check to make sure everything else in the room is perpendicular. I haven't shown this before, but anything sticking away from the wall, you need to check and make sure it's perpendicular before you attach it. So let's go ahead and put this in place. It's going to be flush with the front edge of this piece here, of the shelf, and we'll just drive it down. That's one in, and we'll get the final two in, and we're going to put this piece that's going to go on here, and it's going to once again double up, and it's going to cover up our pocket holes. It's going to provide support for the top shelf, but we can't do that until I actually put the top shelf on, so that I can put these screws in the pocket holes and drive them into the top shelf to hold the top shelf down. Now we have the top shelf in. We just set this down, and we didn't make a video of it, but it was fairly simple. Just bring it in, kind of cock it. It was a little difficult to get it in there because we have two boards lapped and things getting really heavy. But thankfully we were able to get it in. We put it all down, put some cleats back on the second level to support it along its length. And then now we're going to start attaching some pine to the front. I didn't really talk very much about this side, but this is our piece that's right now it's really rigid because both of these are tying right into it. And yeah, it's capping us off really well. We're going to tie a pole right into the inside part of this to be able to hang some stuff. I'll show you what I'm doing with some of the trim work. I've already CA glued this part together. It's pretty well attached. So now we're going to move right here. This piece of pine is going to go in here. This piece will fit snugly right there. And we're going to go and just tack it all into place and do the rest of the pine strips across the front. And then this side will be pretty much ready for painting. We've gone ahead and finished up the face frame, the pine that we put on here. You can see we did it all up on the top shelf. We've got a whole bunch of nail holes to fill, which that'll come later. For now, what I'm trying to do is I'm going to support these rods that are going to be mounted, one on this shelf and go this way and terminate into this wall, another one here and terminate into this wall. I don't have studs in the exact locations where the rods will be, so I want to make sure they're well supported. So I'm going to put these, again, birch 3/4 inch back plates on it, and I'm going to have one in this orientation here to support the rod going this way, and another like this. And then I'll have a dual purpose of supporting this upper shelf, and then I'll finish this area off with a cleat, similar to the way I finished this area off with a cleat below this shelf. For now though, that's what we're going to do, and I'm going to show you how to edge band this because I don't want to double this up and go with the same kind of construction as this. There's really no need. It's only for the support of the rods. So let's go out in the garage and edge band this. We're out in the garage. We got those pieces of wood in our vise. You don't really need to put it in a vise, but this just makes it easier. I have one less thing to hold while I'm doing this. So edge banding is basically covering up the edge of this wood grain that we've been trying to do with the pine. But since we're singling it up, we're going to go ahead and edge band this. So you can buy this. It's veneer edging. It's pre-glued on the back, and it's just iron on. So use a household iron to iron this on. It comes in a roll like this. This is from, I believe, Lowe's, and this is white birch. So it's going to go on here really nice, and it's going to make this look like solid wood, which is what we're after. So basically, you put it on, get it to the right length that you want it, right to the edge of the wood. And then I like to go ahead and snip mine first. So I'm going to go ahead and snip it to the length that I need it. Like that. Put it on, make sure we're good as far as the length goes, which we are. And then get your iron nice and hot like mine is right here. And you just start ironing it on. And that glue behind the banding will melt and form a nice tight bond with the wood. And afterwards you can go ahead and just sand this, and it will literally look like a solid piece of wood if you've done it right. So I can even feel that glue on the side melting and kind of squeezing out. All right, and this is a nice little tool. It's called a Bandit edge trimmer. It comes in the same area at Lowe's, and basically it's got some razor blades in here, and you run it along the edge because there is a little bit of a, you can hear that, it's a little bit of an overhang of this banding on the wood piece. I'll go ahead and push it down one more time. Get it nice and adhered. And then, like I said, you run this along the edge and you be trimming off that little bit of excess there. And I usually come back and sand the edge as well. But that's what you do. We're going to do it for the remaining side. So this one side, we're going to do it for that other edge that is exposed on the wall. We'll do it with the other board as well, and then we'll go fix it in place. All right, guys, we've finished all the nail holes in the closet. We've sanded them down smooth. We've cleaned up the shelving quite a bit. Got all the sawdust out of here. I'm doing a little bit of caulking now. Just using some basic caulk, white caulk from Home Depot. Got a real cheap caulk gun here, but it does the job. I've done a lot of caulking with this, probably thousands of feet of caulking at this point in time. But I'm just going to show you real quick how I do this. So put it in the crack, run a little bead down all the way into the corner, run a little bit out here, and then I'll run a little bit out here. So the trick to caulk, and I did it a stupid way for a long time, was I would use a paper towel, run my finger along it, clean it off on a paper towel, do it again, and I just never really got good results. Plus I wasted a ton of paper towels. Get a cloth, a washcloth or something, get it damp. If you get a little bit of a moist finger, you'll get a lot better results as you're tooling that caulk into the gap, and you just wipe the excess caulk off on the rag. Then you can go rinse it out in a sink and use it again, so you're not wasting paper towels. So let's do this real quick. Running it down, come from the bottom, go up there, and you can see it's a nice smooth finish that you get. Wipe it off on the cloth, come back. If you got a little excess you want to get it off, and then come back from that corner and do that little bit. And in some cases you will not have applied enough caulk. You may have a little bit of a bigger gap in some spots, like I've got right here. But in my experience, and I think you'll find this too, is when you're working on projects, especially built-ins like we're doing here, you're going to spend as much time caulking, filling nail holes and sanding and stuff as you do building the whole thing. So just expect that this part's going to take a little while, and let the time-lapse magic wash over you. Okay, here's what the adjustable shelves look like. It's pretty much just a piece of the 3/4 inch birch that we've been using, beveled on the back edge with a piece of pine on the front edge, with brads holding it in while the glue dries. I've got to sand it and of course paint these as well. It's beveled on the back edge because it is going to go at a slight angle against the wall, and I don't want there to be a big gap on the top of it when it goes in. Vertically, I'm going to go with 4-inch spacing for my adjustable shelves. So I'm going to have holes at 4 inches. The way I'm going to guide myself in making those holes is with this piece of pegboard. This comes in a 4x8 sheet, but I've obviously cut it down. And to make it rigid on the back, I've actually glued a piece of MDF to it as well, 1/2 inch MDF. So this forms a perfect jig because these are 1/4 inch holes, and pretty much any time you use the little pegs to hold up your adjustable shelving, it's 1/4 inch holes that it fits into. So this works perfect for that. They're spaced 1 inch horizontally, 1 inch vertically, each of the holes in the pegboard. So it makes a perfect template, and it's not something you need to spend an arm and a leg for, because this stuff's real cheap. So you pretty much just put it in position where you want it. And I'm going to start on this back edge. And the front edge is going to work similarly, but I need to make sure that I get the angle of the shelf that I want. So of course, lining up those pegs is going to be important. I think I'm probably going to go 2 inches down, so 2 peg holes down from where I do it against the wall. And that will be where that lands. So for the back part, I've already marked up the board for where I'm going to put it, and then a basic trick, just put some masking tape on the bit. That'll be your guide for how deep you need to go. Mine's a little deep on here because I actually have to penetrate through the pegboard and the MDF, and then I have that much bit sticking out. So I finished all the nail hole filling, guys, came back with a sanding sponge, sanded everything nice and smooth, finished all the caulking, and I sprayed it with this beautiful primer. So I used a Kiehl's product from Home Depot, stain blocker, primer in one, and just went ahead and sprayed everything. I was going to use a foam roller, but that was proving to be pretty challenging. Now I can't actually get the spray gun into this gap very well, so I did roll the gap between these two shelves that are pretty close together with the foam roller. I put plastic all over the place as well, cover the overspray that you're gonna have when you do something like this. I need to put another layer on the floor. I pulled the layer up from when I was doing the priming work. I pulled it off the floor just to make sure I didn't have any seepage through the plastic that was gonna end up drying on the floor and making my life more difficult, but I'll cover that again. Over here, you can see my adjustable shelf holes are drilled. I put some dowels in here. That's how I'm actually going to support the back of the adjustable shelf. And I have a notch that I put into the underside of the adjustable shelves with a router that's going to fit into this dowel and allow for rotation, but it won't allow the adjustable shelf to just slip off of its support. So that little notch is going to grab to the back of this, dowel, and it's going to hold the adjustable shelves in place. I figure I'm just going to leave the dowels in there and spray them when I come in and spray the finish coat. This is my spray setup. It's not anything too expensive. The Flexio 970. It's, I mean, anything from Wagner's on the cheaper side at Home Depot. The Graco stuff probably gives you a better quality finish, but I've found that I've had pretty good success with this. I've sprayed all the doors in my house with this sprayer, as well as baseboards, and now I'm doing this closet, so it's definitely gotten its use already, and it's paid for itself. I think it was $175 or something like that, so a lot cheaper than the $350 to $550 range that you'll spend on a comparable Graco. But hey, if you do painting enough, then you might find that to be well worth it. This is just, you know, does the job for me. My router's in the background there, sitting on its motor. That's what I use to notch out the little notch in the underside of the adjustable shelves that you'll see throughout all the shelves. That's where the dowel will sit into this little notch here. And I just did that freehand, so no need for any special tools other than a basic trim router, which you can get for pretty cheap these days. Alright guys, we finished the painting. Stoked with the way it came out. The finish is really nice. We used a Benjamin Moore acrylic paint. It's called their advanced line. It's just the basic white, and I gotta say I really like the finish of it. I like the sheen. It's the right amount of shine that I was looking for. So really happy with the way that came out. We went ahead and sprayed it on just like we did the primer. So that's why you've got such a clean finish that you could really never achieve with a brush. So next part of the job is the baseboards. So we have to put baseboards all right here. All the parts that stick out like this, we're not going to wrap in baseboards. So we're just going to terminate the baseboard into this part, and then we're going to wrap this with the shoe molding that I have, and I'll show you that next. But first, let's go with the baseboard. So I've already got these cut to length on the miter saw, on the chop saw. So we'll just stick this one in place. So that's it right there. And what we're gonna do with this is find our stud, which is one right there. Just a little secondary measure to find the stud. Like I said, the cockroach, the stud finder, we use that. And then we use our brad gun, 18 gauge brads, 2-inch long. That way it'll penetrate through the wood, through the sheetrock, and nice and deep into the studs, giving you a nice tight hold. Like that. So that's not going anywhere. So we'll tack the rest of them in. I'm also going to put one down near the floor that'll go into the base plate. These will be covered by the shoe molding that we're going to put on here. These need to be filled with some spackle hole filler. Otherwise, we'll just speed this up as I go with the rest of them. Okay, baseboards are in. Now it's time to do the shoe molding. This is what I mean by shoe molding. It's sort of like a quarter round, but it is not as deep, so it doesn't stick out as much as a traditional actual quarter round would be. That's the profile of it. I got this from a wholesaler, a little cheaper, same with the baseboards. And I didn't mention this a minute ago, but we've actually pre-primed and pre-painted all this. This is the way that I like to do it. All you gotta do is fill some nail holes at the end and touch up with very small amounts of paint rather than trying to get down on your hands and knees and paint the whole thing. So here's a little tip that I learned doing this job. This is all pine, same as the baseboard. Even with this pine, you can use this tool, which is a shoe molding cutter, and you can see it's actually got the degrees of your cuts on this plate that's mounted to the bottom of the tool. This one's from Crane, and it's a really heavy duty tool. So here's a nice sharp blade right here. Like I said, this is pine, so you'd think it might have some trouble with this. Well, I'm gonna do that piece right down here. So I need an inside 45. And of course the advantage of this tool is you don't need to go back inside and back outside to the miter saw every time you need to make a cut, especially with these long 16-foot pieces of shoe molding. So this one's gonna go right in here with that 45. I'm gonna put it in place, and you limit your amount of measurement mistakes. So I'm gonna go ahead and just put it in place and mark it right there. And that's an outside 45. So same approach, cut it right at my mark, right here. Nice clean cut. Seriously, you need one of these. Saved me a huge amount of effort by having it on this job. Alright, so it's going to go in there like that, and then of course I need my little piece to make the connection there, which I'll cut in just a minute. Any outside corners I'm probably going to glue. I'm probably going to glue this one with the CA glue that I've shown you a couple times in the video. So I'm going to proceed with that. Also, I'm using pin nails. These are 23 gauge pin nails. You probably can't even see the pin nails in the shoe molding. This one's already fixed in place. That's how good that's how small these heads are on these pin nails. I do come back with a little artist brush and just touch that little tiny nail head. But otherwise, this thing works great. It's from Harbor Freight. It's like. All right, guys, we finished up all the shoe molding. All the baseboard is in as well. We've filled nail holes. We've caulked. We've touched up, painted where we need to. This is what the shoe molding ends up looking like around these pieces that stick out. It really looks sharp. You know, it makes it look finished. I really like how that came out. You just use a caulk that matches your paint, and you end up with less touch up to do, but you're gonna have a little bit still. The only thing left to do before we start piling this room full of clothes and stuff is to install our rods going across so we can hang up our clothes. I'm gonna use this Everbuilt product from Home Depot. It's comes with a pole that's rated for heavy duty service, whatever that means. It's just a stiff pole so it can span these kind of long bays that we have without sagging with all the clothes that are gonna be hanging on there. So the way you install this is super simple. You know, there's 3 holes for screws. Put these sockets on, and then the pole goes right into the socket, and then rest on the other end on this socket. So you're pretty good to go. So I'm gonna go do that, and then we'll be in business. All right, guys, we finished everything. We got the poles up. The poles come in either 6 foot or 8 foot length, so you have to cut them to length. And to do that, we used a 4.5 inch angle grinder, which worked pretty well. And so yeah, they're up. They're really sturdy. We like the way they came out. That nice chrome finish looks really good. And the closet as a whole is done. So we're going to show you some pictures at the end. For now though, I'll talk a little bit about the cost. The cost was about $600 for everything. I added everything up from the caulk, the paint, the plywood, everything. It was about $600. So if you were to pay somebody to do this type of work in this size of a closet, and by the way, that cost does not include the big pantry cabinet. The pantry cabinet was about $600 on its own, but you're probably not going to have that put in. So just look at it based on the plywood and the paint cost. But yeah, if you pay for this, you'd be looking between $2,000 and $3,000 most likely for this type of work to be done. So the delta between the $600 and the $2,000 or $3,000 is $1,400 or so that you're saving on labor costs. The job took about 4 days to do, so that's probably pretty reasonable for labor. even on the low end of 2,000. It probably would be higher than that, I would guess, to do something like this. But don't let the fact that if you don't have the tools, don't let that scare you, because you're saving so much just doing a single project, just one like this. By doing it yourself, you're saving so much that $1,400, I didn't even spend $1,400 on all the tools that I used cumulatively, all of them, to do this project. So the big ones would be the miter saw and the table saw. You can get both these tools for in the neighborhood of $300. Table saw even less, actually. So you can manage to do this project on that budget and basically pay for all of your tool arsenal just with a single project like this, doing it yourself. So consider it. You'll be happy with the results. It's something that feels really good about putting your hands to something and doing it yourself. And you can really look at the quality and really be proud of your work. So I hope you like this video. I hope you stay tuned for other ones that we'll come out with in the future. And yeah, we'll show you some overall photos of how it turned out.
Got color in your cheeks. Do you ever get that feel that you can't shift, the type that sticks around like summits in your teeth? Are there some aces up your sleeve? Have you no idea that you're in deep? I dreamt about you nearly every night this week. How many secrets can you keep? 'Cause there's this tune I found that makes me think of you somehow, and I play it on repeat until I fall